Delaware with supporters. But Joe Biden, at this point, this is the spring of 2024, Joe Biden's town hall, which was closed to press, was so bad that campaign officials determined that it was not usable for a campaign commercial. So they took 90 minutes, 2 hours out of the president's day. They filmed an entire town hall, and they determined that it was not usable. Now, some people say this was because Joe Biden was incoherent. He could not really articulate his thoughts in a pithy or even semi-normal way. Some people just said, like, the lighting was bad. That was sort of the 2 points of view.
The Joe Biden scandal keeps spiraling, with fresh revelations surfacing daily, and each new one somehow tops the last in just how damning it is. It's gotten so out of hand that even CNN is starting to abandon ship, now openly criticizing Biden after reports emerged that his campaign blew millions on a staged town hall purely for campaign footage. The problem, Joe was so mentally checked out that none of it was even usable. And get this, close aides have apparently been worried about his cognitive decline since 2019. No surprise there, hit that like button and subscribe. But before we dive into CNN ripping Biden apart, let's take a quick look at how the entire Biden family's facade is falling apart, as even Jake Tapper now calls out Hunter Biden for being unethical and downright shady.
Evidence to support the allegation my father was financially involved in my business, because it did not happen. There's no fairness or decency in what these Republicans are doing. And I do have to say, whatever you think of Hunter Biden, and there's certainly a lot of people in this town, Democrats and Republicans, that do not think a lot of him, there is a certain kind of like cruelty to the campaign against him. Where is Hunter? Where is Hunter? Where is Hunter? Hunter was driving the decision making for the family in a way that people, he was almost like a chief of staff of the family.
Does that strike you as pretty bizarre?
It's bizarre because I think he is provably, demonstrably unethical, sleazy, and prone to horrible decisions. I mean,
tell me how you really feel.
Well, I mean, just look at the record. I mean, after his brother died, he cheated on his wife with his brother's widow and then got her addicted to crack. That's just one thing I could say. I mean, I don't have a lot of personal.
The contrast between reality and the media's old spin on Hunter is wild. They used to paint him as this poor, misunderstood addict, but we've been calling it for what it is. He's a morally bankrupt mess. Just like with Joe Biden's cognitive collapse, the media tried to bury the truth. But now that the political winds have shifted and the election's over, the press has suddenly found the courage to air the dirty laundry they helped hide. And if you're wondering why I'm laser focused on this cover-up, it's because this is one of the worst political scandals in American history. For 4 years, Americans were deceived. And now the Democrats expect a pass by casually admitting, oops, we didn't know. Sorry, but that's not good enough. There must be accountability for the damage done. Now, let's switch gears and talk about CNN exposing the fake staged Biden town hall, because honestly, it's laugh out loud ridiculous.
And Alex, the fact of the fake town hall is not actually the worst part of the story that you report in the book.
Yes, other campaigns have used fake town halls. Now, I would say those town halls usually are in addition to real town halls. Joe Biden was doing neither. This fake town hall was in order to film it so they could make it into campaign commercials. They filmed it in Delaware with supporters. But Joe Biden, at this point, this is the spring of 2024, Joe Biden's town hall, which was closed to press, was so bad that campaign officials determined that it was not usable for a campaign commercial. So they took 90 minutes, 2 hours out of the president's day. They filmed an entire town hall, and they determined that it was not usable. Now, some people say this was because Joe Biden was incoherent. He could not really articulate his thoughts in a pithy or even semi-normal way. Some people just said, like, the lighting was bad. That was sort of the 2 points of view.
That was the man supposedly leading the free world, and Democrats had the audacity to brand themselves as defenders of democracy when they were the ones propping up a man who clearly wasn't fit for office. They didn't fear Trump because he was a threat to the Constitution. They feared him because he threatened their grip on unchecked power and corruption. So instead of backing a competent leader, they handed the reins to someone they could manipulate. It's a betrayal of the American people on every level. And what makes it even worse, they had a chance to elevate Kamala Harris, someone who checks all their diversity boxes, but instead they clung to Joe Biden, a man so mentally checked out that he was barely functioning because he was easier to control. That tells you everything. Now here's Scott Jennings delivering a brutal takedown of Biden's embarrassing fake town hall.
Wait,
Yeah.
someone told you the lighting was bad?
That's one of the excuses.
You're saying that they spent millions of dollars to stage a town hall? Well, we didn't get the lighting right.
That was one of the excuses.
I mean,
Unbelievable.
and this comes back to the question of how many people were aware of things like that, but said nothing, and in fact, perhaps publicly said quite the opposite, that Joe Biden was fine, that everything was great, he was perfectly capable of doing this job for another 4 years, so on and so forth.
Absolutely. I was at the Justice Department at the time when we released the Her report, and he was the entire White House infrastructure at the time was calling the report gratuitous and said that Rob Hur should have never called him a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. And every Democratic pundit, many reporters were out there saying that it was inappropriate for Rob Hur to say that. And the reality is the whole reason why he put that in is because it was his whole reason not to prosecute.
At some point, politics has to rely on at least a shred of honesty between leaders and the public. Sure, we know politicians bend the truth, but this was outright deception. They didn't just mislead, they hid the true condition of the person with the nuclear codes. And now that the lie is falling apart, even CNN, yes, CNN is suddenly willing to investigate things they used to call tinfoil hat nonsense. Funny how quickly the tune changes when the narrative collapses. This sudden media shift isn't about integrity, it's about damage control. These same outlets spent years ridiculing anyone who dared question Biden's mental fitness. Now, with undeniable evidence piling up and public trust in freefall, they're trying to rewrite history and pretend they were just as concerned all along. But the truth is, they were complicit. They ran interference, mocked dissenters, and upheld a facade that served their political agenda. Now they're panicking because the cover-up is unraveling faster than they can spin it.
So let me play Mike Donnellan. He was asked at Harvard University about whether Joe Biden was cognitively impaired, and here was his response.
I watched him every day. You know, there's this view out there, and you see it written as like it's fact. Oh, Biden was mentally impaired. I didn't see that. And I sat in a room with him for hours and hours. I don't know how much time any of those people spent with Biden. I know how much time I spent with him. I know what I saw.
Alex, is he just lying? Because you've detailed a lot of examples in this book where people around him saw him unable to carry out parts of the job in terms of understanding information, sitting in meetings, things like that. Is he just lying?
I don't know if he's lying to us people or if he's lying to himself.
It's honestly comical how Democrats are now trying to act surprised about Joe Biden's mental state, like it wasn't obvious for years. The media is parading around with this new information confirmed by over 200 sources. But let's be real, most Americans didn't need 100 insiders to see something that was plainly visible on TV. We all witnessed the mental lapses, the mumbling, the blank stares, and yet when anyone brought it up, they were branded as conspiracy theorists. It wasn't that this was a secret, it was that the people in power were so obsessed with maintaining control. They buried the truth and let the country suffer under a man who was clearly unfit for the job.
New details about how much President Biden struggled at times to either recognize or remember the names of his own staff. It's all according to the new book, Original Sin. One of these instances happened even before Biden was president. Authors Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson reporting, and I quote from their book, during an 8-day grueling bus tour in Iowa in December 2019, Biden gave his aides pause. While doing prep, he struggled to remember the name of longtime aide Mike Donnellan. You know, he said, groping for it. His aides side-eyed one another. Donnellan had worked with Biden since 1981. And that's all the way back in 2019, which is kind of give you pause just thinking about this. But there were more instances, according to their book. In 2022, they write, standing in the outer oval with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and Kate Bedingfield, his communications director, he couldn't come up with either of their names, according to one witness. Steve, he said to Sullivan. Steve, he continued, obviously struggling to recall Jake's name.
When I say the Democrat Party has zero loyalty to this country, I'm not being dramatic. They've shown it time and time again. They knowingly placed a man with obvious cognitive issues at the helm of the world's most powerful nation. This isn't just political negligence, it's national sabotage. Biden has the nuclear codes. He's the face of diplomacy, the commander-in-chief, and yet he can barely string a sentence together or remember names of officials he's worked with for decades. And the fallout has been catastrophic. Global tensions are boiling. The border is a disaster, and America's reputation is crumbling, but the Democrats didn't care. Their obsession with power blinded them to the consequences. They thought they could install a puppet, pull the strings behind the scenes, and everything would be fine. But it's not. It's chaos. And now even members of their own party are waking up to just how badly they screwed it all up.
The fact that we were able to talk to more than 200 people, mostly Democratic insiders, almost all of them after the election, was shocking, because there were just so many of them wanting to unburden themselves, wanting to get this off their chests after keeping this horrible secret for so long. And it's not like all of them knew all of it, right? People knew little pieces of it. And I think that in itself was shocking. But then if I had to just pick one scoop from the book, I think ultimately the moment that I keep thinking about is Senator Bennett of Colorado saying that after he leaves the White House at an immigration event in June 2024, and Biden's having like a really rough time, he leaves and thinks like, no wonder our immigration policy is such a mess. This guy cannot manage the portfolio. And I think that was a real shock to me.
And that's exactly why I'm locked in on this issue. It's not just some passing scandal. This is about who was really calling the shots for 4 years while Joe Biden was mentally checked out. Key decisions on national policy, international affairs, and internal security were being made, delegated, or ignored entirely, and none of it was coming from the man who was supposedly in charge. This isn't just mismanagement, it's a total betrayal of the American people. The presidency became a facade, a mask to cover up an administration running without a true leader. And what's worse is that so many insiders kept this quiet for years. Now, as the truth breaks wide open, the floodgates of guilt are bursting, with staffers and allies rushing to clear their conscience and distance themselves from the disaster they helped create. It's not bravery, it's self-preservation.
Just one thing to add is all those examples you did, those are actually a fraction of actually what we had. We actually just had to cut them down because it became repetitive. The number of people that
So
Joe Biden
this is a fraction of what you
Oh
got.
yeah, we handed that
to be
book. We
clear.
handed the book in about 20,000 additional words. We had to get it down to 85,000 to meet the production schedule. So we cut stuff.
25%. Well,
I mean, whatever.
I'm not
Like
like
75,
75
but no,
yeah.
but I mean, I'm just
You
saying
made it
that's a
cut
lot that you
25%.
have. Yeah.
And so many people that had known Joe Biden for so long recounted experiences, especially by the end of 2023, where they would go up to him and then they would see, in their words, sort of just this vacant stare, and they would say hi, and they just, in their heads, they were like, I don't think he remembers me.
This is exactly why I've said time and time again that the Democrat Party can't be trusted. This wasn't some isolated misstep or one-off error. It was a systematic betrayal involving the media, party leadership, and even Biden's own family. They all knew he was unfit, yet they kept the charade going because power mattered more than honesty, more than democracy, more than the well-being of this country. The worst part? It wasn't just denial, it was active deception. They pushed a narrative they knew was false, gaslit the public, and silenced critics as conspiracy theorists while the nation suffered. They spent millions producing fake town halls, and not one person stepped up to say, "This is dangerous. This isn't right." Instead, they propped up a man who couldn't remember his closest allies' names because he was the perfect puppet. What makes this even more disgusting is the cold political calculation behind it all. They didn't just ignore warning signs, they weaponized them. Biden's mental decline became a feature, not a bug. It allowed unelected handlers and power players to operate freely behind the scenes, executing policies and making deals while the president stared blankly into space. And now they want to pretend they were unaware. Spare us. At this point, it's not about politics, it's about national security. The country was led by someone incapable of leading, and everyone who enabled that should be held accountable. Every official, every journalist, every strategist who stayed silent when they should have spoken up, they're all complicit. America deserves better, and voters won't forget this betrayal. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.